a young college student who was on the brink of graduating and who was on the verge of being completely overwhelmed with aspirations and goals due to their successes, is experiencing excitement. Having access to the whole universe and the ability to pursue any and all the possible future results. She was able to seek them all. Samantha Josephson fell under this category as one of the people thought fit for inclusion. She had been attending the University of South Carolina for a significant period of time when the incident happened. At that time, she was 21 years old and a senior. She was ready to graduate and start her job in legislation, the field in which she could follow her passion with the aid of the possibility. Her whole existence was full of possibilities, and the future held unbounded choices for her. Her life was full with potential right from start. A single error transformed an everyday ride-sharing trip into a nightmare that would affect the whole country. This was a terrible turn of events, destroying those hopes. The dream would influence every person living in the whole country. From the very start of their effort, their defeat was certain. Samantha's tale touches on the tenuous aspect of life, the hidden hazards that could sometimes accompany the luxuries of daily life, and the pressing need of safety precautions in a society being more linked. Samantha's story drifts across all of these subjects. Samantha's narrative covers every one of these topics in passing. Samantha's story is a particularly fascinating one that touches on every one of these subjects. Her death was terrible, inexplicable, and horrible. Nonetheless, it led to significant lessons and improvements meant to prevent others from having to go through a situation like the one she experienced. Her death was a terrible, inexplicable, and terrible tragedy that happened. The next sections will delve deeper on the horrible story of Samantha Josephson's last hours, the inquiry that followed, and the amazing legacy her parents and congressmen so laboriously helped to create in her honor. The next paragraphs will be dedicated to go into more depth on the above-listed topics. Safety is not something one should take for granted. Even in the most everyday of circumstances, one can learn from a cautionary story this lesson as well. Beyond the boundaries of the personal tragedy that occurred, this is something one should give thought. On the other hand, this is something that could be discovered even in cases where one is not physically there at the scene of the accident. When Friday night arrived, residents of Columbia, South Carolina, had a usual evening. For city dwellers, it was an evening like any other. Samantha Josephson was having a great time with her friends at Bird Dog, a drinking establishment located in the busy Five Points area, when that particular time period came about. Apart from its vibrant nightlife, the area was well known for being one of the places University of South Carolina students would frequent to unwind and interact with one another. This was among the factors behind the neighborhood's great popularity. Apart from that, the neighborhood was well known for its active night scene. Like many other individuals, Samantha's calendar was filled. She was almost at graduation. Her plans included enrolling in law school at Drexel University, and she was trying to balance her demanding academic life with time spent with her friends. Samantha's daily calendar matched that of many other people. Samantha's calendar packed a lot of events. Samantha has an extremely busy calendar filled with events. That particular evening, the air was charged with delight and celebration. The atmosphere was festivity in essence. Among the things Samantha and her buddies were doing together when they were having a great time were laughing, dancing, and appreciating the activity they were engaged in. She changed her mind, though, as the evening carried on and the early hours of the morning drew near, and decided finally that she would go back to her flat. Samantha headed to the Uber app on her mobile device and ordered a ride while the clock was running near 2 in the morning. One of the most common things individuals do when they wish to save the trouble of waiting for a taxi or alone going home is it is also among the most often carried out activities among people. This is among the most often engaged in activities people do. She chose to wait for her transport outside, in the fresh, energizing night air, while her buddies were still at the pub. She carried on this while her friends were still with her. She wanted to avoid returning inside. Hence, this was justified. She was surrounded by the peaceful conversation of other customers exiting the bar as she stood on the pavement. Many of these customers were leaving the business as they were departing. The low light coming from Steedine scattered around the suburb helped her to see her surrounds. Just at that same moment, a black Chevrolet Impala was seen traveling across the neighborhood. Samantha made a mistake, most likely resulting from the late hour, as well as the fact her mind was probably focused on other things because she thought it was her Uber. Both of these prior events shaped the mistake she committed. She got at her destination by slipping into the rear seat of the car and traveling there on a spur of the moment. If we are being completely honest, on the other hand, she most likely paid no heed to it. After all, how often have we made the same error? Your fast thinking will help you to be on your way home in a few minutes following your jump into the car. The path leading to your house is just beginning. Using ride-sharing apps like Uber and Lyft makes us trust the companies themselves as we assume they will safely and securely get us to our locations. Should we make use of these services? We are presuming this is true. One of the several advantages these services provide is convenience. It is also one of the most important ones since it is what drives them. On the other hand, considering the situation, this would not have been her Uber ride. Nathaniel Rowland, the man driving the car, was the one running it. He had no affiliation to any ride-sharing company. He seemed to be the only one using the specific car. Samantha had suddenly been in the clutches of a predator without any prior knowledge of the situation amid that fleeting and innocent moment. She was not sure what was happening. Originally, a small mistake. Someone who entered the wrong car turned out to be a night full of terrible events in a very short period of time. This was first a simple mistake. Samantha suffered the unfortunate event of slipping directly into the trap Nathaniel Rowland had been laying out for her all through. This was the unfortunate incident that complicated Samantha's life. Furthermore, Rowland intended neither to safely get Samantha to her destination nor to register the Black Impala as a rideshare vehicle with the pertinent authorities. Rowland's activities compromised Samantha's safety. Rowland's actions were not, in any conceivable sense, in line with the law. Rowland did not waste any time in putting child-resistant locks on the doors and making sure they were shut when she had gotten inside his car. She walked into the room, and he started this right away. He used this terrible approach to stop her from running away as soon as she realized she was in danger, so preventing her from being conscious. Many people now consider ride-sharing apps to be absolutely necessary for their daily existence. This is so because ride-sharing companies provide a way of mobility that looks to be risk-free in addition to being reasonably affordable and handy. This is so because ride-sharing companies offer their clients a readily available kind of transportation. Samantha, on the other hand, was in a dangerous situation while she was momentarily experiencing mistaken confidence that evening. One more thing to take into account is her precarious circumstances. She most certainly felt extreme anxiety as soon as she realized something horrible was happening right at that instant. Just pretend to be in her place and try to grasp the anxiety that was running inside her mind. Samantha was totally defenseless with Rowland since she could unlock the doors or flee, and he had total power over her. Rowland was able to rule over her without restriction. Rowland may be under complete control over her. This makes the events that happen so horrifying that one finds great difficulty believing what has happened. Rowland executed his aggressive and well-planned attack on Samantha during the period Samantha was being transferred within the vehicle. Rowland committed his attack right as Samantha was being carried indoors. Using a knife with 2 blades, he stabbed her more than 120 times. At the time of the attack, the weapon was still having effects. The knife also had effect on him. Seeing the degree of the attack was disturbing, particularly given the degree of cruelty shown during it. The assault was very horrifying. Samantha raised her hands to block Rowland's punches, thereby attempting to defend herself. But Rowland still attacked her hostilely. Rowland stayed attacking Samantha. Samantha neither tried to stop Rowland from attacking her, nor did anything to stop him. 2 incisions were so severe they passed her hand from the top to the very bottom. The knife in charge of these cuts was the knife used for these incisions was the one has made him Pasio. The attack was definitely executed with a degree of accuracy that would be considered as just horrible. Rowland's punch to her head resulted in Samantha suffering injuries to her head, neck, face, and chest. Rowland delivered his hit straight towards the head. Samantha was fighting for her life. But since his wrath was so strong, it could not be restrained, and she had no hope against such overwhelming brutality. Samantha was fervently striving to keep her life. Samantha had no hope of survival. Her struggle for her life did not change that. Sam's life was about to change at that precise instant. Her death resulted from the terrible injuries she had been subjected to. These were lethal blows that guaranteed her death. It was only a matter of minutes before she faded away. Samantha's body nearly lacked blood once Roland had done what he had done. Samantha had hardly none left. For the day, Roland had finished their assignment. Roland had clearly been effective in reaching his targets. Samantha's blood sample was far lower than the normal human body ability to carry when we compared the quantity of blood Samantha had in her system when her body was discovered to the 4 liters of blood the human body can carry. Samantha had fewer than 20 milliliters total in blood count. The events that had happened caused a developing sense of panic and uncertainty in the hours Samantha left. This resulted from the circumstances as they had happened. A feeling of uncertainty and anxiety is developing in the person gradually. She sadly did not answer the calls or texts her pals sent her or go back to her house. She ignored any of the texts she came across. She was last seen in her house. Thus, the alarm bells rang as soon as she was not present. Her friends and roommates claimed she had vanished in the late hours of the morning. Authorities and law enforcement started looking for her right away upon learning this. Samantha was spotted getting into a car near the pub, and the more facts came to light, the more clear it seemed that she had been seen doing. Samantha was visible boarding the car. It is noteworthy, though, that the vehicle in issue was not exactly her Uber car. The search was only 14 hours long when it came to an abrupt and sad end, as 2 turkey hunters found her body in a barren and rural area around 65 miles away from Columbia. At that moment, just 14 hours of search had been underway. Samantha was discovered in a field, some distant from the bustling entertainment area where she had most lately been seen. She had been left there. At some time, Samantha was seen on the field. Her body's discovery not only made her family and friends go through an incomprehensible degree of grief, but also forced the authorities to start a thorough and timely investigation of the incident soon after it was found. Not too long after the body was found, this research was conducted. The results of the investigated revealed led this action to be done. Regarding assembling the elements of the puzzle, that is, the nighttime events, the law enforcement agency acted quickly to address the matter. Auto rides were able to Lanery Me Black Impala. Samantha was seen entering outside the Bird Dog Tavern by using surveillance footage from cameras positioned in the surrounding area. One observed that Samantha was getting inside the car. Apart from this, they managed to create a link between Nathaniel Roland and the car. One may argue that this was really remarkable. They found the car successfully after everything was said and done, and it was loaded with quite damaging evidence. Roland had tried to hide his illegal behavior, but he failed in that regard. Roland's efforts had no bearing. After looking over the car, the cops found not just Samantha's cell phone, but also a lot of blood and cleaning supplies within. Within the car was Samantha's cell phone. Samantha's cell phone turned out to be located. One could deduce from this that Roland had tried to hide the truth that he had been killed. Roland tried to run on foot while the police were trying to capture him. Nevertheless, he was taken right away into custody. Roland came under police custody. Roland was taken under custody. It was hard to understand what was being stated given the volume of proof that being thrown against him. Apart from under his fingernails and on his clothes, Samantha's DNA was found all around the engine part of the car. Under closer study, it was discovered that the car contained both of these areas. Given the overwhelming evidence, it was difficult to have any rational reservations regarding the fact that Nathaniel Roland was the one guilty for the terrible murder of Samantha Josephson. Samantha Josephson passed death in a violent manner. It was thus quite impossible to have any doubts about the idea that Roland was the guilty party for the murder. The terrible facts Samantha's last hours of life included had the public totally captivated at the start of the trial. Scheduled for July 2021, the trial started with this material in the preliminary stages. Barlier, more than 30 witnesses, including forensic experts offering a comprehensive evaluation of the degree of her injuries, spoke. Earlier presentation of the testimony throughout the trial, one could observe a notable presence of several of the witnesses. The display of the CCTV footage showing Samantha entering Roland's car to the jury was a horrifying reminder of how rapidly a mistake that seems to be of little importance could turn into a situation that is catastrophic. Nathaniel Roland's defense team tried to assign responsibility by suggesting that another person might have committed the crime. This was done to help to distribute guilt, though the evidence against him was overwhelming. The choice to act was taken despite this. Conversely, Roland failed to show up for court, and his defense offered no other plausible explanation that would have fit the facts of the incident. Roland's defense lacked any convincing substitute theory given the circumstances. Based on the jury's unanimously decided verdict, which everyone on the panel agreed upon, the defendant was found guilty of kidnapping, murder, and possession of a handgun during the commission of a crime. Just slightly more than an hour had passed during the jury's deliberations before they had at last reached an agreement. Based on the ruling taken at the end of the procedures, Roland would remain in custody for the remainder of his life, and there would be no chance of his sentence being dropped. The judge overseeing the case at the time the sentence was being applied, Clifton Newman, did not cease from voicing his thoughts at any point during the procedure. He called Roland heartless, and he described Samantha's murder as among the most horrible things he had ever seen in his life. Roland referred to him as heartless. Furthermore seen by him was Roland's lack of emotional connection to his surrounds. Regarding Roland, there is no place for sympathy or pity. Another thing to take into account is that he cannot be pardoned in any form at all. There is nowhere to get Roland released from the results of his acts. Samantha's life was cut cruelly, but even now she is no more physically present in the world. Still, her legacy still influences everything. Sevmore and Marcy Josephson, her parents, converted the immediate aftermath of her death directly led to this need. The What's My Name Foundation's goal is to inform people of the need of ride-hailing service safety. This basis was established with intention of running instructional campaigns. It was meant to teach individuals that the basis was developed. Before getting into a car, you should always make sure to ask your rideshare driver, "What's my name?" before you get into a car. You should always make sure you do this always. The message the Foundation wants to get across is one that is straightforward, but also quite weighted. By use of this simple process, which takes a few seconds, passengers can be assisted in making sure they're getting into the suitable car with the suitable driver. One can quickly achieve this. This is a quality that should be especially taken into account in a world when ride-sharing services have grown to be a regular means of mobility. As such, this generates the extra layer of protection and safety needed. Although this grassroots initiative was successful, Samantha's death resulted in major changes to the established legislation. These changes came about in reaction to Samantha's death. Approved by the South Carolina State House in June 2019, the law known as the Samantha L. Josephson Ride-Sharing Safety Act simplifies passenger verification of whether they are riding with a ride-sharing company prior to vehicle boarding. To reach this target, each and every driver running a ride-sharing service has to display their number plate on the front of their car. It was especially a direct response to the vulnerability that allowed Roland to pass for an Uber driver and profit from passengers unaware of his hidden agenda. Acting in this way was meant to help one get ahead of the revels. Another noteworthy event is Samantha's legacy's ongoing expansion at the federal level, which is really important. Something is becoming increasingly vital that something be done. A measure subsequently referred to as Sammy's Law was enacted into legislation in 2023. This law finally helped to create more rigorous rules for ride-sharing companies all throughout the United States. Companies who offer ride-sharing services are required by the law to implement extra safety measures. More strict driver screening policies, QR tags that may be scanned, and more open identification for drivers are part of these protections. Among the other safety issues are those mentioned above a few times. The application of QR codes that can be scanned is another step taken to guarantee personal protection. With the approval of this measure, which President Joe Biden has formally signed into law, a major stride towards reaching the goal of acquiring nation, many preventative actions are being taken right now, to guarantee the safety of travelers like Samantha, who are en route. The sad tale of Samantha Josephson reminds us of the fleeting nature of life and the latent hazards that could easily be discovered in the conveniences we take for granted every day. The conveniences we take for granted might reveal hidden risks quite readily. In this case, the message being given is not just important, but also relevant. Her passing not only brought the whole country into a state of total despair, but also began a campaign that at last resulted in changes making ride-sharing services safer for millions of users. Our advertising got inspiration from the sad news of her death. Though Samantha's life was cut short, the legacy she leaves behind will keep others from having to go through or face the same catastrophe protected. Given Samantha's life was cut short, miss the explanation demo tours as a strong reminder that we should always be aware, the fact that we should always be attentive, that we stone ways take Mo's extra moments to secure on Sared. And Mar we stung never at could consider her situation. We can get a strong lesson to apply. Samantha Josephson's horrible death has left a lasting impression on the whole planet. In her name, we have to all give top attention to make sure we are regularly running our activities under high degree of safety. We have to give this top a 10 enormous sake.